Then who wants to put the agenda up? And then we probably vote on the minutes.
Yes.
That's the first item.
All right. Do you all see minutes? I have several documents open.
Yes.
Okay, so here are, we did not have a meeting in September, so this is the August minutes. Yes,
Motion
they're
that the
clean.
minutes be approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or other comments? Meeting minutes are passed with no opposition. Thank you. Next on the agenda.
You all see the agenda now?
Yes, now, yes.
Okay. Okay, so the next thing we have is the subcommittee reports, which actually starts with ICI South Hall. Greg, if you want to share anything about our meeting we just had, that's fine. And then we were going to do those presentations about the South Hall waste.
Can't chair both. No, I'm joking. Well, we had a longer than we thought meeting. We went an hour and 10 minutes. And we went through some different words and verbiage on a proposal that had been sent to us all. So we're not ready to send it out yet, obviously. So we came to an agreement on a few things, but not everything. I guess the biggest thing to maybe talk about is we proposed that we email comments and try and do a common Word document to make some more proposed changes. Not those changes would be made, but then at our next meeting, we would then vote with a quorum to approve the people's comments or not. So does anybody else want to add to that or take away from it? Is that my summary?
Sounds good.
Okay. So but then it was also talked about whether we should have meetings between meetings. It was mentioned, and we may still do that. It wasn't decided one way or another. There was worry about if we don't have a quorum for those meetings and how hard it's going to be to get other people. So there was concerns about that, but there was also concerns about everybody just sending comments in. But I thought comments were just ways of changing the document without any official change, and then we would vote on what people had mentioned. So that's kind of where we left it. And I think staff is going to try and send us the common document and with some of the changes that we talked about, and then we could email with other changes. And for those who don't have Word, they could send it directly to the staff. So, anybody have any other thing to add? Okay.
Well, I would only like to give a wholehearted apology for being tardy. I thought I could make it home before I started the meeting, but I was about 10 minutes short.
It's okay. If you don't mind, I was taking over. I'll finish the subcommittee
You go
reports,
right.
and then I'll hand it back to you. Okay.
You go right ahead, Greg. You're in charge.
All right. So now what's the other subcommittee report? I don't see the agenda.
Well, part of the ICI South Hall report is that we have presentations. One would be from Waste Management of Kentucky, which I believe Andy is presenting, or possibly William. And then Pete Flood will present on behalf of the Waste Reduction Center as a South Hall facility.
Okay.
So, Karen,
And I know that Marie is trying to join by phone right now and is saying that she's not able to get in. So I've been trying to work with her to make sure she can join as well.
so Karen, if I could, I would just like to remind everybody what we're reporting on with the South Hall part of this. South Hall there's two recommendations with the study. One is that there's three, but two primarily. One is that disposal facilities that accept municipal solid waste and stuff, transfer stations, landfills, would be required to have bins for recoverable materials. Some there's not a list of recoverable materials that was there, but the whole goal here is that people would come in and have a bin to divert waste before they put it into the landfill pile. And then the other one, if you got that part of it, would be that residents of self-haul waste would be required to use those. Self-haul definition here is residential customers that are hauling their own waste in a car, a pickup truck, or van. That's what self-haul is under this definition. So with that said, making sure everybody understood what we're talking about.
Everybody okay with that?
So Andy, would it be better that I go first to give Marie some extra time?
Yes, please. That would probably be best. I'm trying to get her logged in.
Okay. So I'll go
Thank you.
ahead. Just a second. I know this isn't going to work. Hang on. Okay, does everybody see the first slide, self-haul facilities?
Yep.
Okay. So just going to give a quick kind of rundown on the WRC to give you guys a little bit of an idea about the facility. It is located here close to Meriwether, where we had most of our meetings until COVID hit, 636 Meriwether Avenue. It is a transfer station. It accepts material from self-haul customers. It accepts materials from governmental agencies, paying customers, billed accounts, and some Metro Solid Waste vehicles. As far as throughputs, junk and MSW, typically about 17,000 tons a year. Shingles, about 1,500. Yard waste and debris, about 960, electronics, 400, metals, 125, waste tires, 15, and that's 15 tons, not 15 tires.
Yeah.
So keep in mind that these numbers will fluctuate based upon a lot of things, particularly shingles. We get a really bad storm and we're going to be overrun with them, that type of thing. Metals, keep in mind that when we get Freon containing devices, we actually remove that. We have certified people to do that, and then that material goes to the metal. We do also accept batteries, household batteries, car batteries, and the like. We accept those. I don't have any weights for that. And we didn't count the leaf drop-off event or any other disaster event that we would have where we would collect those types of waste. So that's really the throughputs and the things that we're accepting. I've got all that listed here, but one of the things that I would say is that the Waste Reduction Center is on a little postage stamp. It's cramped, pretty big. And we are accepting a lot of materials on a small footprint. So just to kind of work through, people would enter here and they would make a left to drop off batteries, to drop off electronics, and to drop off tires. Then they would just move on out. Some people, if they drop off a lot of electronics at the business, there may be some charges, but typically not. Otherwise, they're going to make a left and go through our gate, get checked in. A fee would be collected, or they would be noted if it was a free drop-off, because we accept 3 household items, bulky items, for free every day from a customer, regardless of where they come from, as long as they're in Jefferson County. So if somebody generates 1,500 couches, I guess we can take them, and they bring them every day. in theory. So they come through this gate, and there's people here that is going to start to triage them. Metal, they're going to send them here. Shingles, they're going to go here. Bulky junk, it would go here. Yard waste, tree debris type stuff, it goes here. And if they have mixed loads, it's going to go here. And then we have 100-yard trailers where it's shoved off into there and it's hauled out. Everything else is put into roll-off vehicles and transported to the appropriate facilities. So that's how it works. I was trying to get the number of self-haul customers, but I would say that we have a large majority of self-haul that comes to the site.
Does that 3 limitation apply to electronics as well?
Typically, yes.
3 items.
Yeah, typically, yes. We don't quibble over somebody's got 4 cell phones or something like that. But where it gets a little bit different, if they come in with 4 TVs, that's a little bit of an issue. We're the only one accept TVs. Nobody else will accept them because they're a money loser. We accept them because we want to keep them out of the landfill. We pay dearly for that, but we do. Yeah, so any other questions on the facility?
Actually, where do some of these things go? I mean, we've had a lot of talk in the subcommittee that I'm on about shingles. Where do your shingles go?
Currently, shingles are going for beneficial use at the Ralph Avenue facility. That is a beneficial, well, it's not a beneficial use site. It's a site that's being closed under an agreed order. But they use the shingles as a material in their process out there. So it's like a beneficial use. That's what we want to get back to the roadways, because we would rather it be put into the roadways than to be used in that other manner. But
It
even
goes
if it's
to Meriwether, then Ralph Avenue? I'm sorry. It goes to
Yeah.
Meriwether. They don't drop it off at Ralph directly, right?
some people do, some people
Okay.
do.
They have to pay
Yeah.
to drop off either place, right?
Yes. Yes. The yard waste goes to Cotter Smith, along with the pallets. And what we want to do is get clean wood to also go in that pile. So all of that would go to Smith Creek. The metal goes to our contract, which we run that actually through West Rock, but I think they end up having it go to, and I cannot remember this facility for some reason, but it goes to be recycled. The electronics goes to an electronics recycler. The tires go to what's called tire shredding and recycling, which could be used as fuel. At CMEX, it could be used to create what's called crumb rubber for ball fields, tracks. There's not as much of that going on at the moment. And even if it's shredded to a certain specification, it can be used as part of a filtration liner at landfills. Brandon and Andy and Marie would know if they still do that, but I don't know. But that's where that goes. What do we got left? Of course, the batteries are taken to the has-been for battery recycling, and the Freon that's pulled is recycled.
What
So
about
the
the
only
mixed junk?
The mixed junk is the issue. Being that it's mixed, that is one of the items that we're really pushing, and you kind of see through the rest of the presentation, is we want to start to get people into the mindset of separating their loads. Everything's not junk. And that's the same thing with our pop-up drop-offs. We're pushing separation of these things so that they can be recovered. So having a better community education campaign, that people who come in, those things that come in mixed that can't be unsorted, we lose that material. So again, that goes to that sorting and that mindset.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
No.
May I ask how many vehicles that you receive?
I apologize. That was one of the items that I was working on, and ended up not getting that done. So I don't have those counts. I will get those counts.
All right, thank you.
Pete,
So my question is, am I hearing you correctly that this facility is essentially like the others wherein it's perfectly allowed for people to bring in stuff with recycling mixed in with, or recyclables mixed in with stuff that isn't, and it gets pushed into a dumpster and sent off to the landfill? And if so, do we charge them for that? Because aren't they then diverting or, avoiding the landfill fee?
I'm not quite sure I understand your question. If it comes in mixed, if it's something we can pick out with a loader, we'll pick it out. But typically we can't
Right.
pick out that kind of stuff. So they're getting charged a fee.
Good.
Absolutely. And then it's being loaded and taken to the landfill.
Okay. So hypothetically, if you had the room, you could say, we're going to charge you X if you drop it as is, but if you want to sort all this stuff out, we'll charge you Y.
Well, the proposal through the study did say that if you had these drop-off facilities, that the cost of doing these other items would have to be less than disposal. It didn't say how much less,
Good. Okay.
but that is the intent. That's the incentive.
Okay.
Pete, this is Bob Lee. I still have a question on that. So basically, when the load comes in, it's mixed. I mean, it is a mixed load. And what you're saying is that what can be separated, you're separating it or trying to separate, whereas everything else is then considered trash and it's mixed load. Correct?
Yes, but a lot of people understand that if they bring something in, they'll bring it in as separated. So some people already bring in metal separated. Hard to believe that they don't take it to a metal recycler, but they bring it to us. So it doesn't make any sense for us not to collect it in a metal bucket and recycle it. Electronics is pretty easy. We don't get a whole lot of electronics in the waste stream anymore. I think people have kind of started to figure that out. So we don't have a whole lot of that. It's actually, we changed the ordinance where it's not allowed to be put into the waste in the urban services district. What else?
So I'm gonna continue.
Yard waste is one of those things that can come in a mixed load, but it seems like it's not the majority of the load. It's a small section of the load. Whereas people that typically are doing yard waste tree debris, they cut down a bunch of bushes or they cut down some trees and they come in with a whole load of that yard waste.
If you don't mind, I'd like to pursue it a little bit further. So basically, and this might help in regards to our increased continuation of what is a separated material facility. So are we anticipating that if that same type of load went to the outer loop landfill that had to separate recyclables, that they would have to separate that material as mixed material themselves?
No, nothing in this recommendation is requiring the facility itself to do separation. It's requiring that they have available bins for customers to do that separation on their own.
So if some mixed material comes in, it would be set aside and that would be going to the landfill.
It would, but the incentive is that if they bring it in separated, they're likely to pay a smaller fee.
And then the other question I have is when you said the shingles went to Ralph Avenue, are you saying they're recycling them or it's considered beneficial reuse and it's simply filling up the landfill just like everything else that goes to Ralph Avenue?
No, they're actually using it as a layer in this particular case to keep people from digging through the cap to get metal out. It's a deterrent as much as anything. Some of it is going in to fill, I'm sure. Some of it is probably still getting to be recycled, but very little of it is because the demand for that material in the road is so low that that's what we're working on that side.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions?
I would like to offer the precedent that it used to be that anybody who flushed into the MSD sewers just flushed. And it ended up meaning that people who were putting in outlier kind of chemicals were contaminating everybody's sewage. And so we started charging people whose sewage didn't fall into certain guidelines extra money, or we didn't charge them if they pre-treated it to get their wastewater to fit within those guidelines. And over time, every single industrial discharger in this county has adopted pre-treatment because it was cheaper than having to pay higher fees. So to me, that is analogous to what we're proposing to do.
Okay. So I'm going to go through, and this was part of the questionnaire. And we kind of talked about this off and on, and I'm not sure who's seen this and who hasn't. But the benefits to our facility at the WRC is it's a core government service that's offered to citizens to be able to drop off three items for free. It prevents what we think a little bit of illegal dumping on the side of the road that we don't have to go pick up. So it's a core benefit and service that we offer to our citizens. The challenges that we have, and we kind of already have discussed this, citizens not understanding what we accept and sometimes trying to do the household hazardous waste, in which case, we're always having to watch for that. Sometimes it'll get through and we have to deal with that, but we have to do a better job of screening regardless. We all as a facility that accepts waste have to screen our loads for items that don't belong there, whether you're recovering it or if it's going to the landfill pile. We kind of feel like our low hanging fruit here for us is going to be untreated or not painted wood. Because it can go into the yard waste pile, 2x4s and stuff like that. Not common. I mean, a lot of times it's fencing that's been treated, so you can't really put that in there. Better separation of loads. If we feel like that, if we get better separation before people get there, we continue to educate. We're going to continue to pull more of the stuff out of the loads that are the mixed loads that are going to the landfill. Our easiest thing for recovery is metal. It's simple. It's easy to pull out, and it's got a lot of value. One of the challenging material for us would be carpet and carpet padding. And the biggest reason is space. As you saw, that we was on a postage stamp up there, and we're doing a whole lot with the space that we have. But I'm not sure if we can fit another item into there. Maybe we can. But the other part of that is that we don't necessarily have an outlet. There is carpet recycler in town, but I have a feeling that we're going to be kicking and screaming to get them licensed as a recycler in the county. But we have to get that outlet so that we can even collect it. So that's what we've always talked about. Doesn't do you any good to collect something if you don't have a place for it.
What is it used for? Because carpets come in all different fabrics and
Yeah.
there's no.
We've talked about that. A lot of it can go back to the mills and be remade into carpet. Other things, jeans, help me out, guys. There's a lot of things that it can go to, but every one of them are blank in my head right now.
Well, the carpet that you see at trade shows is almost always recycled HDPE, is my understanding.
Yeah, a lot of these trade shows, it's almost like brand new, and they pull it up and they won't use it. But yeah, it's recycled, and a lot of carpet recycling already takes place from the fact that somebody comes in to install your carpet. A lot of times they'll take their carpet with them, and it's kind of like a take back type of a program.
Thank you, Ray Anderson. He pioneered that.
So wasn't able to get the prices up here. Again, I was running a little bit late today. Landfill disposal for the WRC, because we have to haul it, is, I think it's in that $28 to $29 per ton range. Single stream, which we're not taking right now, but we want to be able to do that, and we think we can. We're paying about that same amount. Metal, it's an income stream. Yard waste is right around that $27, $28. So it's about comparable to our landfill rates. Shingles, is, I think, in the teens. So it's not something that it's more expensive than landfilling. Electronics is way more expensive than landfilling. But you have an environmental factor there that we have to consider, and that we don't want it in the landfill. So we're paying for that to keep it out of the landfill. Carpet and padding, we don't have an outlet, so it goes to disposal. Eventually we would love to get into aggregates if we had the space. I know that there's a lot of people out there with small bits of concrete and stuff like that. It's another area that we just don't have the space for. It's heavy. And it's something that we have an interest in. We just haven't had the time to delve into it enough to make something like that work. And, Adam has mentioned that he's willing to put something out at some of our pop-up drop-offs. So it's something that we definitely want to kind of do, but it's a tough item. Time of day. And the reason that this was even put into the survey was that some places have certain times of the day where their trucks are coming in off of routes more than other parts of the day. So it might be beneficial that if we considered a regulation, a statute or ordinance or whatever, that we specify that self-haul at certain facilities would be at certain times during the day when that traffic is a lot less. And that is for a safety concern. But at the WRC, any time is a good time. Considerations for any new requirements, a robust community education on separation opportunities, because I think that we've already started that trend with the pop-up drop-offs. Anything else that we do here, we're just trying to get people out of the mindset that it's just junk, it goes away, we put it into the landfill, when actually a lot of the material has a use. So that separation requirement and opportunities is something that we need to continue to push. It would help us separate more material and deliver more material. And we have to consider space. As far as the WRC down there, I think we're just about making use of every square inch of the property to be able to do this. And we don't have, safety is an issue. We manage it. I can't recall the last time that we've had an injury of any sort. That's been a problem. So it's maybe sometimes looks like organized chaos, but we make it work. And what might keep us from doing it? We really don't have a reason not to do the separation. We're already doing most of it. So we don't really have a reason why we wouldn't want to continue to do this. We believe it's our core service, and it's something that's a responsibility for us to be doing. So that's where we're at, and that's my presentation for the Louisville Metro Waste Reduction Center.
Pete, is that slide that you've got up that you just flashed that is an aerial view of the drop-off facility with the numbers for the different items? Is that on the website?
No, it is not. I'm not sure. It's maybe an idea that if we start to keep pushing this separation stuff, that we let people know before they get there. So it might not be a bad idea. Probably a little bit better job of doing this than what I've done to make it a little less confusing, but I get the idea.
Hey, Pete, I would still like to know the number of incoming vehicles you have. I would like to know the amount of acreage that you have to deal with. Because I admire you being able to help handle as many items as you can without people running over you. And I would be curious as to how many outbound loads that you have daily as well. Because that's the biggest trouble I'm looking at is traffic flow problems and whatnot.
I think it's a fair question, something that we probably all need to be able to do is show what our inbounds and outbounds and our traffic is. So I think that that's a fair point, and I'll work on that, Bruce.
And Bruce, I know just on the roll-off loads coming from 10, the semi-loading, it's generally between 6 and 8 loads a day coming from 10 on its own.
And see, we ship out probably 45, on average, about 45, 46 loads a day coming out of our MRF.
Mhm.
Our
Right, and again, that's
transportation.
only the stuff going to the landfill directly. So that's not a representation of any of the other numbers. It's just the stuff coming out of 10 there that gets put in the semis.
And I did not want to just, I did not want to be, I guess, vague on that. With about 46 loads of MSW being transferred out, in addition to however many numbers of baled material leaving the transfer station. So that can be up to 10, 12 loads a day. So I'm just trying to compare our postage stamp to Pete's postage stamp and see why they're doing it so much better.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting we're doing it any better. We are making something work, but I think it's very specific to the site and what you can and cannot do, the infrastructure that's in place and the roadways and the passageways play a huge role into this. So I think that anything that we do, we're going to have to be creative.
Pete, I would like to add a question into Bruce's information that he wants, and that's, we've talked about trying to do pilot programs. I think you said there's plenty of pilot programs that have already been established in regards to self-haul and separation of material processing centers. The big question, of course, is, and I would think that you would have this somehow, is how much your total cost to run the facility, what does that come to on a per ton basis of the material that comes in? That would be a very good piece to start with.
Well, keep in mind, and I'll see about that, but keep in mind that we're accepting a lot of free material. And we also have some, the electronics is a high cost. We're a service provider, government service provider. So we're in a little bit different boat. I don't know what the answer to that is, Bob, but I'm not sure that we would be comparing apples to apples, but I'll see what I can find out.
I think we could probably eliminate some stuff and add some stuff and come to some kind of idea as far as what at least a pilot program would be. And yours is one of the bigger ones if not the only one in the community. And it takes a lot of material, so we should be able to learn something from that.
Sure. Any other questions?
I appreciate your can-do attitude.
So let me unshare. And I'll turn it back to Bruce and Karen.
Greg, let Greg continue on with the meeting.
Well, at this point, we have the other presentation. So Andy or Marie or William, whoever it is, are you?
Hi, and I know that I think Marie is on now. Are you here, Marie? Maybe not.
I thought it was maybe one of the phone numbers.
Yeah, and I mean, our presentation is not so much a slideshow as it just is, you know, a response to the questionnaire that we were given. We were posed the same questions, I think, as every other facility that's required to provide self-haul services or would be required to provide them under a proposed ordinance. You know, Pete mentioned that it's that looking at a per ton cost per material is sort of comparing apples to oranges. I think that's true for a comparison of a facility like the Waste Reduction Center and Outer Loop in general. Our primary concern with providing a location for residents and civilians to come in off the street and sort material is safety. Everything about our business is focused on safety, from our drivers to the residents on the streets that we go down to the business owners. Providing a space at a facility that is not primarily a self-haul facility for citizens to get out of their vehicles and to separate material into larger containers is a huge concern for us. You know, again, we're going to get the numbers from Pete on the number of incoming vehicles, and those are going to be, you know, self-haul incoming vehicles. Outer Loop sees on average 600 trucks a day come through the gate. That is not self-haul vehicles. That is garbage trucks, roll-off trucks, tanker trucks. You know, I know we're talking about a facility where they would turn off and have some sort of access to a separate facility, but there is still a huge liability concern there for having people outside of their vehicles at Outer Loop who are not trained, who are not in proper protective equipment. We are not at all arguing against the value, both environmentally and, you know, to the city as a whole, to keeping that material out of a landfill or finding beneficial use for those materials. But we do not think that the location for that is once you go through the gate at the landfill. I think from a private business perspective, there's also concern about the recommendation from the study that says that any of those services or separated materials would have to be provided at a cost lower than disposal. That frankly doesn't make much sense to us. We've got, if you're requiring us to staff a location and provide additional capital and material and dedicate a portion of our business to diverting material that will then require additional cost beyond what it costs to dispose of that material, mandating that we offer an artificially deflated price is not something that we can justify. And again, that's just an apples and oranges comparison. That, you know, again, as Pete said, the WRC is a government provided service. That's not something that has to answer to shareholders or has to answer to, you know, the underlying need of a corporation to make a profit and not lose money. I mean, that's I don't know how to say it any more plainly than that, and I know that's going to upset some people, but that's the reality of the cost of actually providing a service. I think we need to be transparent about costs incurred, no matter what they are, and not pretend that something is cheaper than it actually is. If it's something that the city decides to mandate that we provide a service, or that we provide a service on site that we're not currently providing, the city obviously has that authority, but stating how much, you know, we should have to charge for that, I think is probably a step too far. That's effectively what our response is. I'm not trying to be combative or anything like that. I think this is just an issue that we have serious safety concerns about, and that we are not comfortable with at our site.
Do we ever execute a host agreement between Waste Management Inc. and the local government? Or is that still an outstanding legal issue?
The city is required to have a confirmation of available airspace, which we have offered to provide to the city. We are not required to have a host agreement legally.
What I would say
I'm
is
actually
that
asking.
we have, and later on in this, as far as the 109 board report, there has been a settlement of agreement. And while the host agreement is not part of that, there is an agreement between the two that we would negotiate a host agreement.
Nice.
Okay, so then,
Sorry, Pete, I didn't want to step on that for later.
Now, it's okay.
Later in the
It's
presentation.
kind of one of those touchy
Yeah.
type things, so.
well, but it sounds like Andy's proposing that if we want to do something in the way of a change, that's the place to do it, if I'm hearing him correctly, but he may really be saying, leave us alone.
No, I think what Andy's saying is that they have 400 and X number of acres. I forget, Andy, how many acres that you have. And each and every acre has operations on that, which makes it a liability for you to have people outside your vehicle unless you have a manned station there available for them to utilize. And that comes at a cost. And as a public company, we have to cover that expense and produce a margin on that cost. And that's what makes it extremely difficult for you. Does that sum it up somewhat?
Yes, it does. And again, it's not so much leave us alone. It's please consider the safety issue and the liability issue that you're asking for. You know, not just our drivers, but the citizens that would be going to a facility that they don't know how to act in. You know, they're
Andy, if I could ask a question.
sure.
You guys have a citizen drop-off area currently, do you not?
Yes, we do. It is very small. It's something that we're required to have, you know, as a disposal facility, but there is a difference in having a drop-off facility and having a facility where you're asking people to sort at the site. That's the step that is concerning.
Can you tell us how it works?
Sure, and I don't know if Marie is on. Marie or Bill Chavoe would be able to answer that better than I could.
Yeah,
Day-to-day.
I can jump in here. I can jump
Sure,
in
thanks,
here.
Bill.
Yeah, so first of all, Andy did a great job in presenting our views. A couple of things. One question was about the acreage and setting aside acreage for a sorting area. We've in our permit application, we've actually had to apply for and receive variances from the KDEP to move our setbacks closer to the property boundaries, because you have certain distance requirements. We've had to apply for and receive variances to move our boundaries further to the property line. And the safety issue, a couple of things on that. One is we have a safety meeting every week with our operations crew. And one of the things that always pops up is amongst waste management folks is scavenging. So that's one of our life critical rules, because we've had incidences and we've had deaths when people jump in a roll-off box or jump out and try to retrieve some comic books or something they think is valuable, but it ultimately costs them their lives. So we have we're very in tune to the safety aspect of that. Just to reinforce Andy's points that he was making on the citizens area. The way it works is the general public, they wait in line just like any other truck that comes into our facility. They get weighed. They get a ticket, and they go back to the citizens area, which is pretty close to the front of the landfill, and they turn off to the side, back up and put their waste in roll-off containers that are set aside for them. And a lot of times they miss the box, and we have to go clean it up. And so there's some work on our part to keep that area clean and keep things moving. But the area is set aside off the main road. They come in and they do your thing, and then they get your ticket and they leave and pay. We do screen the materials. We do screen the drivers when they come in to make sure they don't have batteries, TVs, refrigerators, hazardous waste, things of that nature. So they're prohibited from bringing that in. Every once in a while we do receive that, and then we have to dispose of that ourselves, and that's a liability on us that it's not, quite honestly, it's a burden to us to have to clean up some of these waste streams that people leave behind. But that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Thanks for the explanation. I guess my question would be, how is it different if people are educated to bring in their loads already separated, and they come to the site, they go through the gate, they're screened, they would go to the citizen drop-off area that already exists, that has containers, roll-off containers, and they would put it into those individual roll-off containers, just as they're pulling it off and putting it in the roll-off containers now. My question is, how is that different? The only difference that I see is that we're asking people to come with their loads separate, with things in their loads separated, and then we're asking them to put it into a certain bin. So the safety wise.
So are we saying, Pete, that if somebody brings a load that is not pre-separated, that we would be able to tell them that they could not come in and separate it at the drop-off facility?
Yeah, as part of this is that if this was done, there would be a requirement that citizens do that. And part of that, and that's what we talked about at the RWRC, we need to get people to separate their material before they come. That is the key to anything like this working. And I understand you don't want somebody sitting up there separating a bunch of material on the ground. That's not the vision that I think any of us have. Once it's on the ground, you have to, it's a whole lot of handling. And I believe that it does become a safety issue. But the requirement would be that they come with their loads separated, and that they would pull it straight from their truck and put it into that container, not to do any separation on site.
So I'm sorry, I think I had that backwards then, because it seemed from the recommendation that that the recommendation would be to provide a site where citizens could separate material and divert it on site.
Have you been to one of our pop-up drop-offs?
I have, yes.
So we have containers, citizens pull up and it goes into that container. We don't do any separation on site. We pull it straight from the truck and put it into that container. So yeah, if it was putting stuff on the ground and you guys becoming a sort of sorting facility, I would have concerns about that too. But that's not the intent here, from my understanding and my reading of the recommendation.
So when you're pulling material from you said you pull material from the truck, is it a city employee pulling material from the truck, or is it the resident getting out of the truck and offloading the material themselves?
As part of our pop-up drop-offs, we mostly provide people. Some people do get out to do it, but it's more of a thing to move the people through quicker, because there's a lot of people that come. At the WRC, everybody unloads their own vehicle.
I've got a question. This is Marie. I have a question. I may have missed it because can you all hear me at all?
Yeah, you're
having
fine.
a lot of. Okay. I think I asked this the last time. Well, one of the times we spoke about this. Is the city piloting this? Because I've asked that before. Are we doing this now at WRC?
Do we do separation? Absolutely. We separate a lot of material no, we don't separate it. we have bins for people to do their own separation. It currently
Right,
operates
so
at the WRC.
right, so you are piloting what you want, a
I think we may have
Dropping
lost
off.
Marie again. But sorry. So I think what she's asking though is, if right now you said everybody at the waste reduction center is unloading their own cars and trucks themselves, under
Yes.
the proposed ordinance, that would stop at the waste reduction center? Or not stop in terms of sorting, but they would offload into into those areas already, rather than offloading into a general area and then having them moved.
Let me make sure that I understand what you're saying. I don't think any operation would change at the WRC. We would obviously sometimes, and really, there's a lot less movement of vehicles from people dropping off self-haul material than what you would think. They pretty much come with a load that is predominantly one item. Some people come in with more than one item in a truck, and yeah, you have to move people around. We're not so busy that we have that as a big issue. But I think going back to Bruce Burrow's point about understanding the throughput of people or vehicles is important when we consider something like this. But no, I don't see us changing the operation, nor do I see a situation where you have to have them put it into roll-offs. It could be a situation where it's put into bunkers, and periodically a loader would come down and pick it up and dump it straight into the roll-off, and off it goes. I can see that because that's kind of what we do with the shingles that we have coming in. So when we say that you have to have a place for it, it can be flexibility in that. The whole goal here is the diversion, not necessarily to strictly say that you have to do it a certain way. It could be that you have in your facility 3 different locations, but you still have the facilities to do that. It would be less convenient for people, but it still works. So I'm not sure that I answered your question, but if it's I don't understand. No, we're not piloting this.
Right.
We do it. We've been doing this for a long time. So it's nothing new for us.
Pete, if I may ask Mr. Stollard a question, get some free legal advice maybe, as we're talking about this. Yeah, I see you, Pat. How are you? Is there any risk or liability if someone is on the ground at any of the 3 other for-profit entities and they are offloading a commingled box of wood and metal, and they cut their finger off on the metal while loading the metal container? Does the facility have any risk or liability? Mr. Stollard?
Pat, are you frozen?
I guess that free legal went out the window.
Excuse me, I was muted. That's a fact determinative question. I mean, just on the basic facts that you iterated, I would say it's not likely. But things are not ever that simple. Excuse me.
Hey, Pat? to get you a drink of water.
Let me be the first to say I'm not a tort lawyer. So it's pretty hard to generalize in response. I apologize. I'm just getting over a pretty serious cold.
Well, Pat, if I may, let's move on. And if you could summarize an answer for me, I'd appreciate it. And I'm sorry to ask you when you're in a coughing situation like that.
Maybe let him use the chat box, but I think what he's saying is it's too broad of a question.
Bruce, and it may be, my question to your question would be, how does the liability change from people that are already dropping off at your site and pulling stuff off of trucks and putting them in the roll-off boxes? How does the liability change? Does it increase? Does it decrease? Or does it stay the same?
Well, in all honesty, Pete, my biggest concern about risk at our facility is the limited space and the amount of truck traffic that we have. You know, the worst thing in the world that could ever happen would be a visitor being hit or possibly killed by an outgoing truck or an inbound truck. And you know what kind of postage stamp we're on. And it is extremely busy. And I will get you load counts as well so that we can compare the two facilities and see what we can learn to do better from what you're doing at the WRC.
And Pete, my answer to that question that you posed to Bruce is that the liability doesn't increase, the risk increases. As you increase the scale of the operation, as you start directing people to a self-haul facility or to a self-haul site at a larger disposal facility, the risk increases significantly. It's not that the liability changes, it's that if you go from 10 people coming into that site a day to self-haul to 100, then your risk increases tenfold.
We're not talking about that.
Yeah,
How are we
agree.
not talking about that?
We're
If
talking
you're offering an additional service to what we're offering now, and the recommendation is that we would be required to offer it at a rate lower than disposal, you
Well,
are
can we
incentivizing
first-
people to use the program at that site.
Can we first argue about the behavior we want to see, and then we can argue about what should be charged for it?
Well, I
We
think
are arguing about that. What I'm saying is that you were saying that nothing. If you're saying we're trying to change behavior, but then saying that creating this facility doesn't incentivize people to use it, then why are we having a discussion about creating the facility anyway? The whole point of the proposed amendment or an ordinance would be to get more people to use that service.
Andy, can I ask a question? And I see your point. I think it's a good point. But my question would be, do you guys allow any of those types of vehicles to go to your tipping face now?
No, we do not.
So in essence, we're not necessarily pulling more people in that would be coming to your facility. It's just requiring the people that are this category to utilize that facility to separate. So while we would hope that people would increase going to these facilities instead of using disposal facilities, but if all disposal facilities had it, we're not increasing the amount of waste that's generated in the community, nor will we be truly increasing the amount of trips to these facilities. It's just that we're asking people to separate at the facility. So I agree that if we suddenly went from 10 people dropping off at the site to 100 people dropping off the site, we definitely increase that liability. But I don't think, in my mind, that we're talking about increasing the volume of traffic there. We're only asking the volume of traffic that is there to separate into the different buckets.
And I think we have a fundamental disagreement about what including that service or requiring that service at that facility would do.
And one other point about the cost. I guess from a landfill standpoint, it's cheaper to put it into the fill area because you don't have a cost of the recycling part of it. We're talking about a volume of very little as compared to.
You're talking about something that you know nothing about right now, Pete. You don't, that comment you just made about how much it costs to put it in the ground. It's very expensive to build landfill airspace.
But you are recovering that cost with your tipping fee. You do recover that cost with your tipping fee, or you wouldn't be in business. So, you know, the amount that we're talking about here isn't a great deal of material. And if you're still charging $5 less a load of coming through, it's still an incentive, but it's not a burden. When you compare the total tonnage coming through these facilities as compared to the very minor tonnage that would be generated from residential self-haul.
Pete, I agree with you. I mean, that there's, you know, what you said was true, but I think in a for-profit industry, we have to protect our corporations from the litigious society that we have. And there may be a premium cost on the self-haul facilities just because of the risk factor. And that may increase their cost in comparison to disposal. And I don't want to stand sideways against what everybody's trying to implement here. I just want to point out that on a for-profit entity, we're required to make a margin, and we're held accountable for that. So the way we can offset that is to increase costs. Would you agree, Andy?
Sorry, I had to take myself off mute. Yes, I agree with that. And I just want to say as well, I mean, we are not trying to stand in opposition to the general goals of this either. Waste Management is the largest recycler in North America. What we're saying is that a disposal facility is not the appropriate location for sorting this material. That is our only point.
Aren't we really just talking about whether the truck pulls in and dumps stuff in dumpster A versus dumpster B, C, or D? When you really, as far as the change behavior, that's all we're talking about doing.
Right, but what we're saying is that that's not the only changed behavior.
Well, try again, because I'm not hearing it.
You're not I think one of the problems is you're not interested in hearing it. When we're saying that the whole point of this endeavor is to increase participation in diversion programs. Saying that doing this, I mean, Pete said earlier, there's a very low number of self-haul, there's a small amount of self-haul traffic at Outer Loop. If that continues at the volume that we have, we're talking about increasing diversion by 0.1%. This will have no change to our diversion rate whatsoever. The only way it has an impact by doing this at Outer Loop is if more people participate, which is the entire reason for the recommendation in the study for it to be offered at a rate lower than disposal. There is no other reason for that to be part of the recommendation than to incentivize people to take the material to a place and sort it so that it doesn't go into the landfill. And I agree, it should not be in the landfill. But the whole point of that recommendation is to increase the rate of participation and the number of people that go through that gate and use that program. If that's not the case, then what we're talking about has no impact either way at Outer Loop, because we don't get enough people every day to change anything. I mean, this doesn't even qualify as splitting hairs. This is not, none of the, and that's why our response said none of this is low-hanging fruit. The material that has value at any sort of scale or volume does not come to Outer Loop. The metals that go to the Waste Reduction Center are such a small portion of what comes to Outer Loop that the labor and the cost associated with recovering them is less than the value that they have to be taken out, both environmentally and financially.
Andy, I think you have some good points. What I would say is that we still need to understand the issue a little bit more. That is honestly the reason that we wanted to have these discussions, is so that we can understand it. I'm not throwing at you guys, but I know that it's a small number. Self-haul was the smallest number of all the items that we had. But it is one of the things that the committee chose to go for first. It's not the only. So it's just part of the bigger picture of trying to, of other programs to divert more waste. And, the value here may not necessarily be in tonnage, but the value may be in changing the mindset of the community away from it's just junk, throw it away, to that everything has its place and where it should go. So
No, and I totally agree with that sentiment. That is not something I'm trying to push back on at all. That's why what I keep falling back on is that the end of the waste stream is not the place to do it. It needs to be done upstream.
And I don't disagree with that. There should be upstream. Let's think outside of the box. Maybe if it can't be at one of these facilities, what other way could we do it? What other programs can we do that facilities can get on board with that could still do this self-haul diversion? The whole point about it being at a disposal facility is because that's where it takes place. That's, if they have to go someplace different, they might not do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the mindset is to keep material out of a landfill, then telling people to do this at a landfill is probably the wrong message. I think getting them to a different site is probably the best way to go for changing, for safety reasons, for changing the mindset reasons. Disassociate the material from the landfill itself, rather than saying it goes to the landfill, but it goes in this box.
As well as I think, Pete, your pop-up drop-off centers have been extremely successful. I think that's, been a wonderful additive to our recycling and diversion. But I want to thank Andy. I want to thank you, Pete, with your presentations, because it does show two different dynamics of how you're accomplishing goals. And there's no one in the industry that does not want to recycle as much as possible. It's just that some are more challenging than others. And it gives me some ideas as to how we're going to structure, our presentation to you at the next advisory committee.
Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate it. And I think these conversations are necessary, even if sometimes that we don't agree. It's all about trying to understand the issues right now before we just make decisions of doing something. So these are discussions that have to take place, and trying to understand the problem is what this is all about. So thank you.
Hi, this is Sam Troutman. Can you guys hear me? Pete, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, thanks. Uh, First, I would really like to commend you guys on your abilities to have hard but necessary conversations. Secondly, I know that a couple meetings ago, there was some talk of the possibility of a transfer station. And I'm not sure where you guys are with that, or if that is just an ongoing discussion, research topic, etc. I have always envisioned a large space that is like a transfer station, but just for recyclables and focuses a lot on extended producer responsibility. I know a lot of, and I'm just going to use something that we all use, which is like tape dispensers, like Scotch tape, for example. They would love to have all of their tape dispensers back. You know, like if there was a bulk shipment of these tape dispensers, you know, I'm sure that they would be willing to pay a little to have their product back, because who is really going to benefit the most from having that waste tape dispenser back? It's Scotch, it's the generator. So I was just wanting to bring up the topic of extended producer responsibility. And, you know, maybe, again, I am very new to this group, and I'm not sure how far along you guys are with the topic of having a transfer station, but those are just thoughts that were coming to me. And if I had the space, a big warehouse that was just available, I would love to offer it up for this kind of thing, because I think that, you know, as I think Andy had mentioned, you know, getting the consumer or the customers, the residents, you know, people that are not in the waste business, getting their mindset to shift away from, you know, putting their waste into a landfill. You know, that's really important. And having waste just not be associated with landfills or a landfill, and in that same geographic area, you know, having them take their reusables to a totally different location, you know, whether it's them separating it or having a couple people on site to assist them, just to make sure that things are sorted properly. Because again, people that are not in the waste business, they don't know. So anyway, that I just thought I would share those thoughts. I know several cities in the US, and I've not done as much research as I would like. I also know over in Europe, there are a lot of waste diversion habits, mindsets, processes, ordinances, just involving, you know, EPR or extended producer responsibility in order to divert waste and get things properly recycled. So that's all. Thank you for listening.
Ms. Troutman, I would like to, I guess, number one, say thank you for your continued interest in our program. And in the least, I'd love to get you up to our Center City Material Recovery Facility. And I know Waste Management has theirs, and Republic has theirs, but you would be able to certainly appreciate the amount of effort and expense that goes into sorting materials so that they are recoverable. It is truly amazing if you've not seen it. And on the next tour, I'll make sure I get a line out to you to invite you to go up and look at that facility, because I think it's something that you truly embrace.
Yeah, thank you. I would love to come out for that.
As far as the agenda goes, if we were back on that, Sandra would still give a residential C&D subcommittee report if there is anything to report.
You're muted, Sandra.
We've been doing is continuing to gather more information and had excellent presentations by Pete and the rest of the staff in regard to gypsum drywall recycling and shingles and concrete recycling, because ultimately recycling is fine, but if there's not a stream to put this, as we just spent a lot of time talking about, if there's not a way to get something into the stream that ultimately is worth something to an end user, then we've missed a part of the whole recycling process. And so we have continued working with that, and we will continue to do that in the future.
Thank you. And we do also have on the agenda a staff update, which just includes recycling cart distribution update. And the good news is the education team is not doing as many deliveries as they once were. We're kind of moving toward just a regular keeping up with requests and purchases through our normal contractor. So that feels good because we'll have a little bit more time on our hands, I think, to do some of our other projects. Pete, do you have anything else you want to say about the recycling carts?
No.
And then we have only 7 minutes till 6 o'clock, but Pete also has some 109 board reports listed.
So I can be really quick. We applied, the 109 board authorized us to apply for our next calendar year litter abatement grant, which should come in about $370,000 that we can use towards litter abatement and litter education. One of the things that they offered this year, the grant administrators, was a program called Cash for Trash. And it's kind of new, and we've always had a goal to start paying people to go out and pick up this material. And what it's going to allow us to do is pay $100 per mile to any nonprofit group that goes out and cleans. If they want one person to clean a mile, that one person will get $100. If they got 100, then they'll all get $1. If they only clean 1 mile, but if they clean 100 miles, they'll get that much money, more money. So there's a lot of community groups that are nonprofits. It has to be a nonprofit, such as a sports team. There's talk with, I think, University of Louisville. That could also be a publicity thing with some of the athletes as a way for them to do it. There's a lot of opportunity there. So we're going to be partnering with Brightside to administer that part of the program. And we're in talks with it. Once we get everything lined up, we're going to do a little bit of a soft launch with some groups. I think it's a certain group that we have in mind. I won't mention the name yet, but we have hopes that this is going to help stir continued year-round cleaning, which is really what we need, and to also be able to direct those groups because they're getting paid to certain roadways and roadways in need based upon assessments that we're doing. And we can get into the Clean Collaborative and everything that we have going on there, but we have really turned up the cleaning aspect of what we're doing. It still feels like a drop in the bucket. but that's where litter education comes in. So the other item that the 109 board has done is there has been an agreement that is signed over the litigation between Waste Management of Kentucky and Waste Management District. That agreement has not had all the ink put to it yet, but it's very close. So that settlement is in place, and I think we're good to go. And one part of that is the fact that we have agreed to start talking about a host agreement again. So that's a very positive move. So unless anybody has any questions about those two items, that would complete the 109 board report. That might be the shortest report I think I've ever given.
Last on the agenda is just the public input. If there's anything, and of course I've listed the announcement of the next meeting dates, which the board meets next Wednesday at 5:30.
Hey, it's Sam again. I just wanted to clarify because I know the last meeting, it was mentioned that I needed a contract. I think, this is why I want to clarify. I think I need a contract with Veolia or some other disposal facility in order to dispose of household has waste that I plan to do neighborhood collections for. I've been moving forward slowly but surely with my process and getting tax ID numbers and things of that nature. But I just wanted to clarify, I wouldn't be bringing the waste to Metro has been. You guys would like for me to just dispose at Veolia?
Okay, I apologize. I missed a little bit. You're asking if our recommendation is that you contract directly with a vendor, something like Veolia? Is that what I understood? My apologies.
No, you're fine. I know that last time it was mentioned that Metro has been had a contract with, I think, Veolia.
It is Veolia. Mhm.
Yes, and I'm not sure, but this is why I was asking, do I need a contract with Veolia myself? Is that what you guys would prefer?
I believe
either way is fine.
I believe that would be the cleanest way to do it. That way, it kind of takes the waste district out from its concerns with any kind of liability in this.
Sure.
And I think that you're going to have a little bit better idea of what you're dealing with as far as disposal and what you need to do as far as your business goes in recovering your cost.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you for.
And Samantha,
Perfect.
Samantha, I would refer you to a document titled Household Hazardous Waste Management. It's an EPA document from August of 1993. It's a manual for community collection programs. It deals with, it says in Appendix A that household hazardous waste is exempt from the RCRA subtitle C regulations. And then, but that is preceded by 50 pages of what you ought to be doing if you want to handle or manage household hazardous waste.
Yes, I've seen that document. I've not read it in its entirety, but yes, I will go back and revisit that. Thank you. And if anybody else has any other suggestions, I I know insurance is one thing that I'm kind of struggling with as far as clarifying exactly what I need for this type of business. I've gotten quite a few quotes, but I could use a little help in that area if anyone has experience with that.
I have Sam's contact information if anybody wants to, I can help connect if needed. And at this point, I'm not sure if it's Bruce or Greg or who, but that's the end of the actual agenda.
Greg, if you don't mind, I'll just ask for any other comments from any board members. Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Story. Do I have a second?
Second,
And I'm sorry, who is that?
Leonard.
Oh, Ms. Leonard, thank you. Any other discussion? I appreciate everyone's input tonight. The motion, the second. All in favor, vote aye.
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 Those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. I thank everyone. Again, my apologies for being tardy. Won't let it happen again. And I do want to thank the 109 board members' participation in the meeting. So thank you very much. And thanks everyone for their input. It's
Thank
complex.
you, guys.